the HK USP, one of the most iconic handguns ever made, primarily through its use in video games. Things like Call of Duty, CSGO, any of the stealth video games that you want to choose from, this pistol is in it. Or a version of this pistol. There are many versions. I'll put them up on screen here. This one specifically is just the standard USP 9mm with the standard safety and decocker, and also the law enforcement lockout device back here. Now, is this gun relevant? That's the main question. What place does the USP have in the modern world of handguns? First of all, what are you trying to do? The USP may be relevant for some purposes. It also may be irrelevant to others. So what is the purpose you're trying to use it for? And there are a few main categories. The first one, competition, whether that be something as simple as Steel Challenge, or maybe up to IPSC, or really anything. Any kind of competition like that. The second thing is self-defense. And self-defense has two branches, home defense and concealed carry, if you can use it for that. Now, concealed carry is going to be a lot less likely, but I'm sure there are some bigger guys out there that would love to carry something like this. And then, of course, there is duty use. Military, police, bodyguard, I guess. Anything where you're in a profession where you need to use a pistol. Those are the main categories. And then, of course, there's going to be a collecting category, but if you're collecting, every gun is relevant because you want to collect them all. So that one's, we'll just ignore that. Before the other three, are they relevant? Well, let's go by them step by step. First of all, competition. The USP would fit into any of the standard duty segments. It doesn't come with irons, it doesn't come with an optic. It has just regular irons. You can get some upgraded iron sights that will fit in the stock division or any of the standard divisions. It's hammer fired, which is generally preferred in competitions, but not always. There are plenty of good striker fired handguns. The safety can be switched out to whichever way you want it to be in one of the many configurations, so that's also not really a worry. However, for competition, magazine capacity might be something that is a downside. Now, in Canada, we're stuck with 10 rounds no matter what, so this is irrelevant in Canada. But in the rest of the world, not the rest of the world, in many parts of the US and some parts of Europe, you can get standard capacity magazines. Now, a USP magazine standard is 2 rounds lower than a Glock mag, or a few rounds lower than, I believe, Smith & Wesson, and a couple other really popular guns you might use. And so maybe that isn't very relevant. Now, or very relevant for competition use. Now, you can get, I believe, extended base plates and extended magazines, and you can get the jet funnel, a flared magwell. But that's expensive. For what you're getting, that is super, super expensive. Now, a lot of guns in competition are super expensive. For comparison, this Glock 24, which is basically a 17L, is expensive to put together. All in, it's probably about $2,000 of custom work, but the individual parts are not that expensive. This is just a cheap flared magwell. It's like $15. The majority of the cost is in the slide work and the Cerakoting and the optic. But it's still more customizable. You can do that to this but it's not as simple. And on top of that, there is the size difference. The USP is significantly thicker and it has a higher bore axis than the Glock, which is very relevant, especially for guns like the Lago Alien. That gun is specifically designed to have as low a bore axis as possible, and you will notice that this gun has a higher bore axis. Now, you can get variants of the USP that are better for competition, like the Expert and the Elite, but I'm strictly talking about just the standard USP, none of the others. And in that sense, for competition, you can use it. It is not preferable. Any gun, any reliable handgun like the USP is usable, but you wouldn't use this as your main pistol if you were being serious about the competition. All right, the second thing, self-defense. Now, for home defense, perfectly accurate, perfectly fine. You can get some night sights, you can get a flashlight. Now, it does have the USP uh, underrail thing, which really isn't common. You can get flashlights directly for it, or you can get I believe it's a GG&G mount for a pick rail section, and then you're free to use whatever you want on that. But again, that's an extra cost over something like a modern Glock. Now, this isn't a modern Glock, this is a Gen 2, so it doesn't have it. But modern Glocks will have pick rail. Many modern handguns for self-defense will have pick rail, and they're also way cheaper. This gun is going to be double or triple the cost of a Springfield or a Smith & Wesson or a standard Glock, and you still have to add stuff onto it. So can it do a good job at self-defense? Absolutely, 100%. But for the price you're paying, is it really worth it? Probably not. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is usability. If you are trusting someone else to use your pistol in a self-defense scenario, let's say you have a partner, your wife, maybe your boyfriend, and they just have smaller hands. This is not going to be very comfortable to use. I have medium-ish to large-ish hands, and it's quite a large grip. It is significantly larger, meaning you really have to know how to hold a pistol properly. And if your significant other isn't as trained in firearms as you are, that might be a problem in a self-defense scenario. Again, this pistol will work well. It's perfectly reliable for it. It's just a bit outdated. And again, with the magazine capacity, 15 shots, you should be fine. Will those extra 2 rounds do it for you? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it'll give you peace of mind. Maybe that's something to consider too. Now, concealed carry, I mean, I don't know what kind of a human you have to be to conceal carry this, but you gotta be one big ass brolic human to concealed carry a USP. And if you can pull it off, you know what? Good on you, man. I'm not gonna stop you. I think you already know what you want. And finally, there is duty use. Now, I'm not a police officer. I can't speak for exactly what a police officer will want. I can only regurgitate information that I have been told and that I have observed and I have read online. So, the main benefit for police departments when it comes to the USP would be the safety situation. You can get the USP in the plethora of safety options. You want the safety and the decocker, you can have it. You can have left hand, right hand versions of everything. Safety only, no decocker, no safety, just decocker. You can have one with neither, which is just the LEM version, which is just essentially a double action only. And of course, police departments can get this lockout device for when they're mass storing their pistols. Now, With that said, the USP is still not the best option available, or even close to it. It is bigger and heavier than a lot of other pistols that police officers might use, such as Smith and Wessons and Glocks, and hell, even 1911s, if some police departments still use those. Which means it's not going to be able to work with all of your officers, and that could be a problem. You want as much universality as you can for your standard duty sidearm. And if you have any officers with smaller hands, I mean, this immediately just is not going to work. And then, of course, there is capacity, right? It's the 2 rounds lower than others. And while you will have other magazines on you, police departments are typically not willing to go down any extra rounds when they don't have to. And then, of course, there's the cost. This is going to be significantly more expensive to outfit any police department or law enforcement agency of any kind when compared to anything else. And lastly, it has the European style magazine release, which you can perfectly get used to it, right? It takes maybe a couple hundred rounds, and you would get perfectly used to it. But it's also not common, and because it's not common, anyone that has used a handgun before is going to be very out of their depth because they're going to be so used to doing this. Even I have caught myself pressing the side of the pistol when there's nothing there, and I have probably close to 1,000 rounds through my USP. It's easy to train in for someone that's never held a handgun before, but someone who's used a handgun before, that can be hard to train out. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So while it could be used, and I believe still is used by the German armed forces and some police, it's not efficient. I believe it's being phased out or planned to be phased out because it's just an outdated design. And that's where the USP comes to. It is an outdated design, right? This is not, when you add it all together, it's not the best at any of the things that we talked about, except for collecting. It's great for collecting. It's missing some features. It's bulkier than it needs to be. It's just outdated. But despite it being outdated, it is still perfectly usable. You can use it in any of the scenarios that I listed and have a reliable sidearm. It's not going to do anything the best, it's not going to do anything unique, but it'll work, which is more than can be said for a lot of pistols out there. So that's kind of the relevance of the USP. It's relevant in its name and its recognition, but if you rebranded it to something completely different, you brought it out on market today, it would be irrelevant from day one. Its relevance lies in its significance to gun nuts and video game players and moviegoers and TV watchers. Its relevance is in its history, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. So they will still make these. People will still bring these to competitions to have some fun. People will still use this as their home defense pistol because maybe that's what they've used if they were in the German armed forces, or because that's just a gun that they've always loved and they're perfectly comfortable using it. I can't see law enforcement ever using something like this again anymore, as in a new pickup. But it, in a pinch, if you had one for some reason, it would work. It's perfectly reliable. So, that is it for this video. Thank you for watching. Like the video if you like it. Comment whatever thoughts you have on the USP. Subscribe. I very much appreciate it. And let me know if you want to see more of these types of videos. Not reviews, not overviews, just picking up a gun that has a long provenance and explaining its relevance in society, whether it be Canadian or American or the world. I think I might want to do one of these videos on the SKS. It is very relevant to Canadian society or Canadian gun owning society as a whole, but that won't come for a little bit. Keep an eye out. Maybe by the end of the year, I'll have a video on the SKS. That is it. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.